What are you waiting for? When I talk with entrepreneurs, business owners, and even managers, I'm blown away by how slowly that people move through their businesses when they're faced with uncertainty. They delay things like hard decisions, hoping that things will get clearer as time goes by. And meanwhile, their businesses are being left in the dust. And I mean, you started your business by stepping into the unknown, but now when change shows up, when the future is a little bit murky, it's like everyone's just standing around waiting for the heavens to open and deliver a divine memo. Well, I hate to spoil your delusion. That memo is not coming. And that's what we're talking about today on Marc Haine Live. Welcome to this episode of Marc Haine Live. This is where small business owners and entrepreneurs pick up core skill sets to help them create the show-stopping, jaw-dropping experience that your customers and your employees deserve. I am your host, customer and employee experience strategist, Marc Haine. I'm so glad that you're here today because today we are pulling back the curtain on the lie. You know, the one that you have to be ready before you can take bold action. And isn't people talking within quotes so annoying? Stick around with us because this is going to be an episode you won't want to miss. You know, too many managers and business operators are living in the someday mindset. You know, that's the mindset where, someday I'll take the leap. Someday I'll pitch the idea. Someday I'll stop pretending that my to-do list is a vision board. And while we're all busy waiting for confidence to magically show up like a fairy godmother, our competitors are out there taking bold action and winning. And that brings me to our question of the day. So, have you ever stopped to calculate how much time, money, and lost productivity trying to get ready is really costing you? Because here's the thing. Getting ready means that you have to have a crystal ball to be able to foretell the future, to find every challenge and every obstacle that's going to be stepping in your way. And the reality is you're truly never, ever ready. And I would love you to go ahead and share your experience on social media. Go ahead, share a link to this episode, hashtag it experience leadership, and put your comments down. And I'd love for you to become part of that, part of the conversation. Today, our guest is not your average leadership coach. Unless your average coach works with Fortune 500 executives and keynotes at Coca-Cola and BMW and helps high achievers dismantle their limiting beliefs like a wrecking ball with a psychology degree. Now, Angus Nelson is an executive coach, a strategist, and the author of the upcoming book, Confidence Comes Later. He is the founder of Evolve Leadership and hosts his very own podcast with that same name. Angus blends psychology, emotional intelligence, and proven frameworks to help clients overcome limiting beliefs, driving personal growth, and aligns purpose with profit. Angus, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Mark, I'm ecstatic to be here myself. This is going to be a great conversation. You've set this up so perfectly. I'm ready to dive in.
Terrific. Hey, so maybe start off first and foremost, maybe tell us a little bit about who your clients are, who call you up and say, I need your help, and how you serve them.
I have probably two, I would say, clients that I work with. My one-on-one clients are typically on the corporate side. I have clients who either work in SaaS as a large organization, or they work in that enterprise space where it's, some of my clients include Cisco, Bridgestone, Viva, FedEx, things of that nature. So high performers, senior executives who are facing some of the pressures that anyone who's got a lot of responsibilities or a large team has to face. On the other side of the equation, entrepreneurs. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and especially in my group coaching, where people are at that place of they've had success to a level, but now it's like, why am I not getting past this ceiling? What is the thing that's holding me back from the next success? And that's pretty much where that division of where someone is at. They need to make decisions and they need to get decisive, right? And then the second piece of that is they have to get direction. And
Right.
so
And
in
so,
that kind of transition is where I lie.
yeah, so we're not talking necessarily about like CEOs of multi-billion dollar corporations. We could be talking about entrepreneurs who have gotten so far in their business and they hit a plateau and they just
Yep.
don't have necessarily the skills to take themselves further without um, that crystal ball we talked about.
Yeah, and the reason why I make that distinction, is that it doesn't matter if you're running a multi-billion-dollar organization or if you're running $100,000 organization. The ceilings that we face are all the same. They're internal.
Right.
Most of us face on the external things, the tasks, the delegation, the teams, the systems, the SOPs, but all those KPIs that we get so, excited about mean nothing if the internal structure, how we believe about ourselves, the things that we tell ourselves, if that's getting in the way, none of the outside matters.
So what are some common signs that a leader or even a business is stuck with this level of inaction of, well, I hate to use the word complacency, but I do
Mhm.
see when I walk into businesses that the major symptom, I think, of what we're talking about today is complacency.
Mhm. Complacency, comfort, that comfort zone. Hey, we've
Mhm.
always done it this way, or this is just the way things are. We default to what is, because oftentimes when we're committed to what we're doing, we see change as a threat. Change means I have to be different. Change means what I've always experienced might go away. What I've built might disappear. What if I step out and I fall on my face? Success is actually an entrapment because we get one degree and then we think, well, I don't know if I can get the next degree and the next
Mm.
one and the next one. And so it becomes this success trap. And again, all those internal things create the friction. And then we experience these elements of resistance and doubt and imposter syndrome and all these labels that we give it all create that point of where indecisiveness rules and reigns because we don't know what to do. We're actually choosing to be confused.
Mm. It's interesting. And, I as you were saying that, I just flashed back to a hotel operator that I worked with at some point, and they said, "We've been doing the same
Mhm.
thing for 20 years, and now there's more hotels coming into the community, and we're just losing our market share, and we don't know what to do next." And right then and there, I think they defined their own problem, haven't they? We've been doing the same thing
Yeah.
for the last 20 years. And so
The funny thing,
go on.
I was just to say, the funny thing about our humanity is we love certainty. We love to know that what we do is going to have a certain outcome, and we attach our identity to that outcome. And so when we get to that point where the next step is uncertain, if it's going to change, if it's going to be different, if it's going to put things at risk, our brain freezes to that fight and flight, that old archaic, you know, caveman brain. And yet the same brain that got you here has the ability to get you to the next if you'll give it permission.
Yeah.
And these have become some of the cycles that I find over and over and over again as people become their own worst enemies. It's so cliche and yet it's so true.
And yet, it's all rooted ultimately in fear. People don't want to change. Like I work with restaurant owners. I can't change the menu because I don't want to lose the customers I already have. And so change equals loss. And that becomes the big fear, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that's the way we define it because if you have scarcity in your mindset, what you just said is absolutely true. Change means loss.
Mhm.
But what if the thing that's in your brain says, if I change, it means maybe I have to prove something I haven't proved before. See, I did something before that was awesome. I made it, but what if I just got lucky, Mark?
Mm.
What if it was just a timing thing, Mark? What if somebody just opened a door for me, Mark? And what if that doesn't happen this time? This becomes a story that we tell ourselves is that we're going to change. Maybe it won't work out the same way.
Mm.
Innovation is my background, and innovation is about reinvention over and over again. So when I was working with companies from Coca-Cola, BMW, Wells Fargo, like massive brands, and I'm with senior executives who are all painting a target on their back because the concepts and ideas they're bringing to the table threaten some organization within the company. We're looking at all of these crowdfunding, crowd lending, peer to peer. At that time that we had this association, there was Airbnb and Lyft and Uber and TaskRabbit and all these particular brands. And these companies were bringing in innovation senior executives to say, what is our opportunity to partner? What is our opportunity to acquire? What is our opportunity to maybe disrupt ourselves? And any one of those equations caused doubt, risk, failure. And yet that's what our entire business is all based on. It's all risk. It's all uncertain. We have no idea. So what makes us think like all of a sudden we've got like the grip of certainty? Like finally, like you didn't know when you started. It was your best guess. And it got to the next guess and to the next guess. Some guesses you got right. Some guessing you got wrong. And it's never changed. Right. But some way, somehow we start to paint this narrative in our head that at some point we're going to figure it out. And you never will.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because I mean, I would suggest that probably 99% of the incidental entrepreneurs out there, the people who decide, I'm a welder, I don't want to work for anybody else now. There's an opportunity to open up a shop. Maybe I start in my garage and then I scale up from my garage to an actual physical shop or whatever. Like the people who stepped into those made decisions because it just seemed like a natural evolution. But yet they get to a point where now it's like, well, I'm not prepared now to go to a double man shop, or I'm not prepared yet. I'm not ready for this. And so why do you think that so many leaders confuse kind of this feeling of confidence of making good decisions? Why are they confusing that with this whole idea of being ready?
So if you stand and ask them about things they've done, they will be stalwarts. They will be like speaking with such authority because it's something you've already done.
Yeah.
Which is the whole definition of confidence. Confidence only lives in the past. Full stop. Confidence can never live in the future. It's impossible. You can never be confident about something you've never done. And this becomes that mental paradox.
Yeah.
And so we get to that point where what I've done, I know exactly what I've done. I know the path. I know the experiences. I know the conversations. But this next thing, I don't know. And that becomes that friction.
Part of it is we can look back at everything we've achieved and said, you know what, I've done some really hard things. I am confident that I can do hard things because I've done it in the past. So now I can be confident that I can do other hard things as we move to the future.
And isn't it interesting that's not the story we tell ourselves?
No.
We forget, especially if you're like a high performer, especially if you're ambitious, you rarely take stock of how far you've come.
Yes.
You only see where you haven't been yet.
Yeah.
And that's the trap, is our brain is focused on a thing in front of us. And that's the whole, like, if you ever read the book, The Gap and the Gain.
Yes, I have.
By
Dan Sullivan.
Ken Harding and
Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan, right? So that's the whole premise, right? We get so busy looking at the gap between where we are to where we think we should be, all based on my expectation, all based on my story and my timing that I framed in my own head. And this is the BS that we tell ourselves. Mm-hmm. And if we start to dismantle the belief systems, dismantle the stories, and get really honest and humble, having a humility to say, can I see this through a different lens? Only then can you get to a place to see the depth of what a powerful mofo I really am. Look how far I've come. Look what I've faced. Look at the resistance and resilience I'm capable of. Then you can take the next step.
When you get stuck in this mindset of constantly looking forward and not really recognizing and celebrating what you've done in the past, do you think that this has kind of corporate culture implications as well?
I don't want to go so far to say that it only exists in that realm, because I think it exists in so many realms. It just so happened that's probably the most prevalent. Yeah, is because so much of corporate is based on performance. If you sit in the shadows, if you aren't seen, you don't get promoted.
Right.
And yet, if you put your neck on the line and you put yourself, let's say, out there, I'm putting air quotes out there like you did earlier in the show because you love it so much, is that
Because
whole
just so
premise,
annoying.
right? Yes. Is that whole element of, if I'm out here in front to be seen, it's because I want somebody to recognize me so they will elevate me. And we become performance-based. And that's also the trap, because if I step out into that performance and I fail, I feel like a failure.
Right.
And that plays into my head. So now a possibility of weakness is seen in my leadership, a possibility of you can't trust that person, a possibility of that person doesn't know what they're doing. And suddenly we put on the handcuffs.
Yes.
And this person cannot perform. So in the corporate, there's some unique differences in that space. Those nuances play out. And yet, even in the entrepreneurship world, there's some similarities. It's just not as stark. It's not as obvious.
Right. Right. And of course, then it goes down the line, right? Because I mean, obviously, if you're an owner operator and it's like, I got this far because I am just so great at what I've done. Look at everything I've done. And you don't tap into the magic and the superpowers that other people in your organization bring to the forefront, then you are always sitting on this thing that I'm the one with all the answers, not you. And then we're in for some real danger.
Yeah. And so then we get into arrogance. Now the person that's in charge is just the loudest and most boisterous, but doesn't mean they have the best ideas.
Right.
It's just they're willing and comfortable to be in risk. They're willing to put themselves out there. And it just so happens some of the dominoes fell their direction.
Yeah.
And yet the person who's brilliant, who has the creativity, who has all the empathy and has all the compassion, has all the leadership capabilities, stays quiet and plays small. Because they just want to be safe.
Yeah, because they're feeling marginalized, and why take the risk? Why take the risk of getting shot down, right? I'd love to dig into some actionable strategies that, you know, as people, as hopefully this is resonating with the audience, that they could turn around and they could start looking at their organization, look at how they're behaving within this idea of you know, abundance versus scarcity, and think, you know, we can change something. So I'd like to get into some strategies that we can take, and we'll get to that right after this.
When the spotlight shines on your business, are customers applauding or yawning? In other words, how is your business performing? Make your business a star with the new book, Lights, Camera, Action, Business Operational Excellence Through the Lens of Live Theater by Marc Haine. Marc uses his business and acting experience to help you see your business like a live show, so you can create a performance your customers will never forget. Buy Lights, Camera, Action today at your favorite online retailer or directly at marchaine.com.
Welcome back. I am speaking with the sought-after keynote speaker and executive coach, Angus Nelson. Angus, you have a book coming up, don't you?
I do. It's called Confidence Comes Later, ironically on this topic. And it's all in that premise about facing uncertainty and how to get past all the limiting beliefs, how to get past all the friction and the resistance, because confidence certainly comes later.
Yeah, it's interesting because we think it has to come beforehand, right? I think, again, that's a big lie we've been telling ourselves. And yet, you know, when you think about it, I did a presentation with a colleague of mine, and we looked out to the audience and talking about what it takes to get ready. And we asked each of them, how many of them are parents? And how many of them, when they've had their first child, were ready to have their first child? Right. And isn't that the big fear, right? When you find out, oh my goodness, we're going to have a child, it's like, we're not ready.
Yeah. I love that you said that. It's kind of like a bump, set, spike, and you didn't even know it. So you bump and set. And one of the practicals I would tell you is, in that same fashion of, let's say, a mother becoming a mother, when that child is born, there is a transformation of identity. Before she was single, before she was, you know, doing mimosas with her girlfriends on Sunday morning, and, you know, going to this thing and that thing. And then suddenly, now you're a mother. You know, and now as a mother, there's, you know, all the things that come with that, everything from caretaking and diaper changes and breastfeeding, and all those different things change the body, change the nature, change the temperament, change the focus, right? And then you have the father has a different kind of change of identity as well. Now it's, I want to be a defender. I want to protect, this family. I want to provide for this family. Like, we have these little things and nuances. Like, for myself, I even took it to a different level myself personally. I talk about it in the book. I had a season of 3 years with my two youngest where I became the stay-at-home dad. And I had to change my identity, where my wife became, quote unquote, the breadwinner. And now I was caretaker, and it affected my ego, affected like who I am. Like, who am I in this world if I'm not doing X, Y, and Z? And it changed some dynamics. So I say all of these things to say identity drives everything. And when we get into certain situations, the way we perceive our identity determines whether a door opens or a door closes, whether we have opportunity or whether we don't. And so as we're moving forward in our lives to make a decision to go into this next thing, it's not about what should I do as much as who should I be? How do I need to show up for this next journey? How do I need to show up for my team? How do I need to show up for the people around me, for the investor, for the bank, for the et cetera, is all based in identity. And this goes back to what we were saying before. We're always focused on this external piece, but yet the internal piece is the more powerful. It determines how high, how far, and how fast you can go.
That whole idea of tying identity to it, I think, is just brilliant. It's with a context I hadn't thought of before, but you are absolutely right. When people were facing COVID, facing shutdowns, facing having to lay off their employees, having to modify their way their business operated, it all started with somebody turning around and saying, who do I want to be in this time of crisis? Do I want to be the one that's going to whine and bellyache, lay off my staff, close my doors, and then tell the world how terrible it is to me? Or am I going to be somebody who's going to step up and take the responsibility to my various stakeholders and see what we can create?
100%. And just as a practical example, if you have a challenge within your team, let's say something's at risk, we're in some uncertainty right now. This current age right now, there's tariffs that are being, set aside into the global, nether sphere. And we're at this place where it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? In this moment, if you're the business owner of a product or service, the identity you need to take on now is one who is a caretaker for those that you serve. The identity that you take is to be resilient in and amongst the fire, the storms, or whatever is happening. The identity you need to take is to now reach out to all those customers, reach out to those clients and say, hey, how are you doing? I just want to let you know we're thinking about you. Is there anything that you're concerned about? Is there anything you have questions about? And then to serve them in such a capacity that they feel safe and, more importantly, they feel seen. That's a completely different identity than I'm a business owner and you're paying me for the service and product I'm providing.
Right.
Very different identity. And so when you take on a challenge, then you have to ask yourself, who do I need to be in this moment? So if it's in, a crisis of a relationship within your team, and there's some embattlement going on between two colleagues, and you step in that moment, and sometimes we can get sucked in, like, what are you guys doing? Blah, blah, blah. Versus an identity that says, in this moment, I'm going to be calm and I'm going to be curious. In this moment, I'm taking on the identity of psychiatrist. In this moment, I'm going to take on teacher. In this moment, I'm going to become coach. Those are all identities that in this moment, I put on that persona so that I can be who I need to be in this moment. When you step in to go do that pitch and you're raising capital with a venture capitalist, you have to go before that group and you have to speak with this level of conviction and this level of competence and this level of vision. That's a very different identity than an employee or someone who's begging for someone to give them permission. Instead, you step into that room and say, I'm taking permission. Your background is in acting. You take on a persona off stage and you start thinking, what does this person do? What do they feel? How do they act? How would they respond? And you put on that persona. That's the identity. When you walk onto stage, boom, I'm believable in the identity I'm now taking. And here's the kicker. The most powerful believability in that moment is you. When we start to play with our psychology, to start to believe that we belong, believe that we deserve, believe that we are worthy, our external structure rises to meet that belief. It starts internally with the identity, and the external will match you.
I love that, and that's such a profound kind of lesson. This idea, of course, acting, because I do believe that we do put on several roles within our day. We do assume different personas as we go forward. So this idea, you talked before the break. You were talking about this idea of action precedes confidence.
Yeah.
For businesses looking at things like now. Life is changing again. Now we have all these tariff talks. We know things are going to become more expensive and so on. How do we apply this in practical terms? There are so many different variables to success. And so how does one look at where they are now and say, adopt this principle of action precedes confidence so that they can keep moving forward?
Yeah. So I like to say that all movement is not progress, right? So
When you're delivering,
go and do this, and I do this, and I do that, and I'm trying to hustle, and I'm trying to grind, and I'm trying to that's not the action I want to emphasize. All of that is panic, fear. It's an expression of different emotions versus understanding that the action I need to take in this moment is just what's required. Sometimes in the midst of ambiguity, in the midst of uncertainty, all you need to do is take the first step of the journey. The first step will reveal the next step. And it's kind of like, I like to say it's like the difference of doors. And I'll give you 3 doors as examples. There's one door, which is like the emergency door. If you hit that bar on the door swings open, maybe alarm goes off, maybe it doesn't. But once that door shuts behind you, there's no handle on the other side of that door. You're committed. And so you go through that door, you got to know that's the door to go through. Then there's other doors you go through where it has a handle on both sides and you can walk in, you can check it out. Is this the right door? If it's not, open up and go back through and go back to where you came from. Meaning you got in, you could go check out the joint, and then you could come back out. And then there's a third door, which is a revolving door, which is an and both door. We're going to try some of the things, but they're going to be micro commitments. They're going to be experiments for us to see, is this the next part of our journey as a business, as a launch for a product, as testing a new piece, for our company, a new product, a new chemical, a new color, a new what have you. Those are revolving doors. So when you start to see the actions you need to take, see it through these different doors, the action I'm going to take is a piece that either is going to get me to this next thing and I'm committed, I'm fully stepping and jumping in. It's a step that I can walk in. We're going to try it out. If it doesn't work, we give ourselves permission to walk it back and say, you know what, didn't work. And we don't have to feel bad about it. It's not a failure. It's information. It's data. Or the third piece is that revolving door is we're going to do the and both thing here, and we're going to start integrating this as part of our process to see if it's a good fit for our next step. Those are the kinds of actions that we have to understand. One of those actions is the necessary action for us to learn the next one.
Right. What's interesting about that philosophy of the revolving doors, this is not about the shiny object syndrome, where we're just chasing kind of the next hot thing. We're being very, very strategic and painting an objective of where we want to go. And but again, we don't necessarily know what it's going to take to get there until we start moving towards it. Then we're going to come up to barriers, just like we did when we started our business.
Yeah. And data informs the next decision. And now, ironically, that action created confidence. Hey, I can believe in this. I can get behind this. I think this is going to work. You take the next step and the next step, and that action, just those small bits of action, create that confidence for the next step. And those are just one piece of many examples I can give you of things that I think will move people forward and get them out of that stuck state.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the stuck state is very interesting because time and time again, when I walk into businesses, especially businesses that have been around for a little while, you can see that they're in a stuck state. You can see that they haven't progressed past kind of what they did 15 years ago. And somehow, when you see them, it was interesting. I was working for economic development. I was going into these businesses, and you could see that the property didn't have a lot of love. We'd walk into like trucking companies and moving companies and like all these different companies, and the place hasn't been dusted in years. And you look at the owners and you go, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're like, it's and it's that whole attitude. And what I found really interesting was when I sat down with them, I said, "Hey, can you tell me how you got started?" And the lights would come on. All of a sudden, their eyes would gleam. "Oh yeah, I was 23 years old. I was doing this and da 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 da." And all of a sudden, you saw in their eyes, you saw the purpose behind what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
But somewhere over the years, they've kind of lost that focus. How do owners and operators, how do they look at where they are and figure out how they relight what they had 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago when they started? How do they relight that now to the point where they can start moving forward into a future that they're going to be proud of?
So I'm going to contradict some of what you just said.
Sure.
In this certain kind of context is what once was doesn't matter in any state. Whether you had success and you did some things before and that all worked and that was amazing, and I had this fire in my belly and I had all this drive and I had this whatever, maybe there was something where I failed. I went through a divorce, addiction. I went through something. None of that matters. Highs or lows do not matter. All that matters is today. And so one of the things that I think puts a fire in some of the people that I served in their belly is this concept that the past doesn't matter. The future you can't control. The only thing you can do anything about is today. And someone once told me an acronym is today is the only day actually yours. And how can I show up in my fullness today? How can I get passionate and grateful and abundant about what's in my life today? Because how I show up today in my presence, in my power, in my servanthood to those around me, suddenly I create momentum into what becomes tomorrow. All of that is seed for this thing to take root. And then my tomorrow becomes my today. And now I'm showing up with even more fire, with even more excitement, because now I'm seeing this fruit is starting to grow because each day I'm showing up in my fullness. And this is the piece that we miss, is that if I'm showing up today with that gratitude, with the understanding that today is the only day I can control, I get to choose. I can't choose what's going to happen with these tariffs. I can't choose what's going to happen with my stocks or my crypto. I can't going to choose who's going to lay someone off or if I have to lay someone off. I have to detach myself from the outcomes. I have this premise, and I talk about this in the book, that there is this element of paradox where in the nothingness is everything. And when you show up with this drive to create what you want to create outside of performance, outside of people's approval, their need to please, outside of scarcity, outside of fear, in that place is your true power. And so you have to take nothing from everyone else to create everything within. Everything you need is already in you. And
now that we have had this goosebump moment, Angus, you got to tell people how they can get in touch with you because this is powerful.
Yeah, come and find me on all the socials. You can just Google Angus Nelson. I will show up on all the things. I'm the most vocal social person that has the name Angus Nelson on the planet, apparently. So you can find me on my website and LinkedIn and all the things. Like if I was John Smith, no offense to the John Smiths, but it would be a very different conversation.
Yes. I love that. Hey, this whole mindset now, is this what you mean by the term activated?
100%.
Can we redefine? Can we talk about this mindset of being activated? Do you have like a simple kind of thing, that a mantra that somebody could take away and go, now I know I'm activated?
So I have a whole premise, like a kind of a framework to how to get there. But if I were to say it in its simplicity, It's based on a couple of different things to get activated. One is, I call it the Spice Girl principle. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Until you get clear on what you're trying to create in your life. And when I say want, I'm not saying like you have to have a gazillion dollars and you have to live in a massive house and you have to have all these whatever things. I'm not talking about goals. I'm not talking about things you touch or own. I'm saying, who is the person that you want to be? Who do you want to be remembered as? Who do you want to show up as? Who do you want to have your life be in touch with and aligned with? I want to show up with happiness. I want to live in abundance. I want to live in power. I want to have the ability to dictate my future. I want balance. I want alignment. I want vision. And once you decide, like, this is the person I want, and you start to describe that person, then every day you set aside some time to remind yourself who you are in that power, in that possibility. And there's like 4 pieces of all of this that kind of like wrap around this whole thing. You know, one is about, you know, this element of your beliefs. One of this is the stories that we tell ourselves. What is that thing that is driving us? And those are based on inputs. The third piece is the systems we create around our business, around our lives, our habits, our routines, the frameworks to our business. And the fourth piece is the impact we want to make. And when you have those 4 pieces again, beliefs, inputs, systems, and impact, you can get freaking excited about waking up in your day. And suddenly you get activated to say, what do I want to create? What difference do I want to make in the world? The element of my meaning and contribution, the value I want to offer others, no longer becomes something I do to feel validated. I do because someone's going to like me and give me an attaboy, that someone's going to pay me and someone's going to do things to me and make me feel good. No, this is a natural expression, a byproduct of the power of who I am. And all I'm doing is letting my light shine and being more fully me. And if I can connect to that, I find all the things I've ever wanted in fulfillment and satisfaction. That's the power.
It is. It's so powerful. And here's the thing is, part of the challenge is this is the internal kind of leadership awakening that we need to have. We need to activate ourselves. But then how contagious is that when you're looking at your teams, when you're looking at you put the people who are doing the work each and every day in front for our customers, the people who are in the warehouses receiving stock, the people who are sitting in the offices doing the bookkeeping. Like imagine what happens to those people when that's the culture that we build. And how do we take it to 100%. That next step, Angus, right? Because it's one thing to feel a certain way. And I've worked in municipalities where I come in with my own mindset, my own belief system, my own value systems, and they clash directly with the protectionism of siloed thinking and so on, that it feels like it is such an uphill battle. So as leaders, what do we need to do to move this, not only to take it from and then emanate it out to everything else that matters within our business? A little question. I'm sorry, that was just a little question.
Yeah. No, but it's the question, right? Is can we learn to be vulnerable? Can we learn to love? Can we learn to care for the people around us? Because until we get to the point where we can bring our best selves and say, hey, I see that you're pretty upset. You're pretty pissed off. I get it. Tell me why. And then they start giving you a list of why. And in that moment, instead of you reacting, instead of you trying to solve, instead of you trying to answer, go another layer deeper. Where do you think that's coming from? What's driving that? And sometimes what you find is they just had a pissy day and they're taking it out on other people. And now it's someone else's fault. Sometimes they're in a victim mentality. They feel powerless. They don't have any ownership of their role or the destiny of the product they're in charge of. Sometimes they just feel weak, or sometimes they feel like they're unseen. But until you can have that level of compassion and empathy, you're actually never going to know what the real problem is. Right. And most corporate, most entrepreneurs, let's just be honest, humanity is in a reactionary state at all times. We just came out of a whole litany of craziness over the last several years with, the things that have happened in our world. And here we are in yet another wave of craziness. And we weren't wired to handle the amount of information that we're taking in on a daily basis. And it's activating parts of our brain that weren't meant to get as activated as they're getting. And until we can find this level of compassion and peace, this way of getting away from all the noise and showing up in our full selves, we're never going to be able to operate in that awareness to ask the questions, to get curious, and to find out what the real problems are. And so I feel like my role in this crazy world is to help connect people with that source.
Help tap them in. And this is just doing this podcast, people tuning in right now, this is the outfall of that, is hopefully this is giving them something to think about.
100%. And, there's another piece that I'll throw in real quick is, when we get to that piece of giving ourselves that permission, that's really what it is. We're so used to things around us picking. Like you get in school and you're like, oh, who is the answer to this thing? We raise our hand and someone gets picked. We go out on the back in the day, we're mature enough to remember kickball. And who's going to pick me? Get me picked on the team. I don't want to be the last one picked. And then you apply for your colleges and you say, these are my top ones. I'm hoping one of those top schools will pick me. And then we put out all of our resumes and we apply for all the things. We do all the interviews, hoping one of those companies will pick me. And then we were like looking for the raise and then, the change of roles so I can get elevated. And now I get my promotion because somebody picked me. Our whole world is based on getting picked. And at some point in time, we finally have to wake up and say, you know what? I'm done waiting for someone else to pick me for anything. I'm going to pick me. And that's when the world changes. That's when everything shifts into a different gear.
And it's amazing for people who don't feel that they have a lot of control in their world. So a lot of business owners who are kind of, they're part of, it's so funny. I think it's hilarious that I'll talk to franchisees and it's like, I belong to a big franchisor. Independents are so lucky because they can make decisions on the fly. And then you talk to independents like franchisees are so lucky. They have all these resources, right? And everybody can see what they don't have. Yeah. But at the same token, they're not celebrating what they're capable of achieving on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. In my book, I actually talk about that power of comparison and how it's so detrimental. And we won't go into all that, but there's so many things in that context that, again, that's more of a victim thing. It's always something external. They have this. I don't. This person has that. That's scarcity, scarcity, scarcity versus I'm in power. I'm in control. I get to choose. I pick me.
I love that. And so what I'd love to do is I'd love to get into some pitfalls and some cautionaries. As people want to start looking at this idea of self-empowerment that it's inside me, what are some things they need to watch out for? And we'll get to that right after this.
When you're delivering an important speech to a huge audience, it's easy to lose your place or go way over time. Give yourself an advantage with the Pro Speaker Presentation Speech Timer app. No more checking your watch or calling for time. The Pro Speaker Presentation Speech Timer app keeps you on track with easy-to-see timers, even changing color for visual prompts during your speech. And you can set audio cues to practice or set it to vibrate so you don't even have to look. Be the pro you know you are. Download the app at speakerpresentationtimer.com.
Welcome back. I hope you are getting a ton of value from today's episode. As you can tell, Angus and I are two peas in a pod, and we are on a mission to support businesses just like yours. So if you belong to an organization that could use our help, or you or someone you know might be planning a leadership retreat or a conference, or you're looking for some compelling content that can serve your people, drop us a line. We are here to serve you. We'd love to explore how we could be of service to you and your people. Angus, as people are tuning in and watching this and going, it's all very fine to say, you're absolutely right, I need to look internally. What should leaders avoid when they're trying to shift from this idea of inaction to activation?
Well, I think, and this speaks to a lot of the ambitious entrepreneur, is we think that I got to back up and get a running start, and the step I'm going to take is massive. or excuse me, I was saying both. It's either or. They're going to say, oh, it's either I'm going to stay like this or I'm going to do that. And it's like, we have to flip the complete script. We just throw the table over and we start off on something huge versus, no, you just need a small step. Like the first thing is like, sometimes you just need tweaks. Sometimes what you're doing isn't working only because of certain little things. And again, start internal and then things will be revealed. Once you get that alignment, you can get clarity. And then you say, oh, here's the next step in this. We need to raise our prices. We need to be comfortable in raising our prices. Oh, we need to shave down some of the number of people we have on our team and, decrease some of our overhead. Okay, we make that. Like those little things can be so much easier and way more impactful than trying to like do something massive. The biggest piece, if I were to like underscore everything, going it alone, like flying solo. Anyone who does business thinking that they have to figure it all out is a moron. You are being your own like bottleneck, trying to do all the things. The truth is, at the end of the day, you have only so many hours, and you have a couple of gifts, skills, and talents that are your zone of genius. And ideally, that zone of genius is a profit mechanism within the company. Either you have the IP, the ideas, the concepts, the product, or you have the sales chops, or you have the marketing chops. There's some talent or skill that's likely in that area, or I say one more thing is you have the vision. Like those are all the pieces that typically the entrepreneur has. You can't do it all. And I'm guilty of that for so long. I was trying to do, and that's where you were talking about before, the burnout. That's where the exhaustion comes. And then you start getting into a seriously scarce state. And in that desperation and in that need, you can't sell anymore because you've got like sales breath. You can't, move forward because you don't have any new ideas or concepts because your brain is so clouded with cortisol because you're so stressed. These are all the pieces that if you're trying to go it alone, you've also lost objectivity, creativity, and innovation. And the biggest thing is just two pieces, time and energy, the only resources you can't get more of. You can get more money. Like if you have to expand your team, like just get savvy, like, make more sales, find a way to get more mechanisms, more of those external pieces. Of course, I will always say those external pieces will start with the internal piece, right? You're giving yourself permission to build your team, giving yourself permission to charge more, giving yourself permission to change markets, change directions, change messaging, change your ICP. Like all those things are these little things that make all the difference in the world. But because you're so wound up in your own world, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
And so you need outside help, whether that starts with consultant, a coach, a mentor, or a peer group, joining a mastermind or joining some kind of like entrepreneur group within your city. You need outside people. And I love the phrase you said before. I mentioned it in my book too, from Gaping Void, where he says, nobody can read the label on their own jar. Yeah. We need somebody else.
We need somebody on the outside to be able to read that label. And there's so many great organizations out there. Like in the States, there's Vistage. And in Canada, there's Tech Canada. We have Chamber of Commerce, where you could create your own little board of directors just by picking people who are in maybe non-competing businesses to just say, hey, can you just become a board of advisors for me?
Yeah. And it's also that vulnerability part. Like when you get around other entrepreneurs, if you find really, really quality human beings and you sit down and you're like, this is what's really good. And the masks come off, and the reality hits, like, this is where I'm like, and you're like, oh my gosh, you too? I mean, I'm not the only one. I felt like I was the only one. It's like, you start to discover like, oh, we're all trying to figure this out. None of us have arrived. And what part did you do that got you past that? Oh, I did this. But what did you do about that? And all of a sudden, this exchange of data, exchange of advice, exchange of really powerful pieces of humanity, and we can move forward faster.
I love that. And it just makes so much sense when you say it, and yet we seem to have such a hard time kind of adopting that mindset for any length of time. And again, is it protectionist? Is it ego? Is it lack of control? Maybe you know,
Yeah.
I've seen owner operators who want to be the hero of their own story. They refuse
Yeah.
to give up control because they want
Yeah.
to be able to look back and say, that's because that's my business. I did
Yeah.
that, as opposed to
Yeah.
looking at the team and saying, look at what we're able to accomplish.
Yeah, it's all that. You're absolutely right. You know, there's a lot of ego, you know, attached to it. There's
Yeah.
scarcity beliefs. There's control pieces. But at the end of the day, it's also a matter of, is someone willing to go to that nothingness state that we talked about, where you stop performing, where you stop trying to like taking all the action? Because oftentimes when someone goes to that state of like doing all the things, and suddenly they say, I don't have any time. There's not enough hours in the day. And what they're actually doing is they're believing in their mind that if I just take more action, if I just have more activity, I'll be productive. My productivity is in my activity, and it's BS. It's horseshit. Because action doesn't mean that you're actually making progress. Activity does not mean progress. Motion does not mean progress. It just means you have a lot of movement, but not a lot of intelligence, not a lot of strategy, not a lot of putting the pieces together. And here's the craziest thing is, in the moments you get the best ideas are when you're doing nothing. You're in the shower, you're on the toilet, you're walking the dog, you're in the pool, you're in the hot tub, and suddenly those sparks, almost divine inspiration, hits you. And you're like, oh, that's magical. And it happened when your brain was relaxed. Sometimes the best activity you can do is go swing a golf club. It's go for a walk. It's get in the gym. And on that gym part, let me just bring this up too. I think every entrepreneur needs to be health conscious, because when you exhaust the mind, right? Or excuse me, you exhaust the body, you free the mind. And a lot of that activity is actually anxiety, stress, and nerves wanting some output. And so what we know, what we believe in, is working harder. We've fooled ourselves into believing that that's the way that we did. Get in the gym, go for a run, do some Pilates, like do something, go for a swim, get all that energy out of you, and suddenly your brain gets clear. Your vision, your objectivity, your perspective changes. So I think every entrepreneur, every high performer needs to do something with their body, and that purifies their perspective.
Love it. That's such good advice, because to your point, you know, when I get my best ideas, it's usually when I'm not thinking about it, not working in it. I'm doing something completely different. I'm gardening, I'm doing something, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm going for a walk. And to your point, I mean, I think it was Anthony Robbins that said emotion comes from motion. And so you got all the aha moments happening when you were in motion and not necessarily with your head down grinding at the grindstone. So Angus, this has been an amazing conversation. Could you remind everybody one more time how they can get a hold of you?
Best place I'm going to tell you is just go to angusnelson.com. You come in there, you can drop me a note, and I would be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn as well.
And as we wrap up, do you have any last thoughts about what we've been talking about today?
You are more powerful than you think that you are. You have more possibility than you've ever dreamed you could achieve, if you'll just give yourself permission to step into that reality. And it starts with get somebody outside yourself. Talk to me. Tell me, where am I missing it? What am I not seeing? Show me my blind spots. Be like a mirror and show me the spinach in my teeth. And if you're humble enough to do that, radical things can begin. But it starts with that first step.
Angus, thank you so much for doing this today. I really, your knowledge, your passion, your expertise, all wrapped up into this package is just absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for doing the show today.
Thanks for having me, Mark. You're amazing. And thank you for creating a platform to share your heart, to share your gifts, to share your skills, and to help bring out the best in those you bring on your show.
I appreciate that. Hey, if you have any questions about today's episode, or you would like complimentary 30-minute brainstorming session with you and your team, feel free to book yourself on my online calendar. The link is in the show notes. It's the one that's marked meetwith.marchaine.com. And please feel free to reach out to Angus. His contact information is in the show notes as well. Remember, you can't do this alone. Honest to goodness, you really can't. As always, I am at your service. And if you haven't done so yet, why don't you make sure that you're subscribed to this feed? Follow me on social media, follow this channel, and you'll get notified each and every week as I bring you fresh new perspectives and brilliance, just like we had with Angus today. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate that you invested your time to learn something new, investigate a concept maybe you didn't really think about before, and hopefully you got some super high value. My name is Marc Haine. I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope you dare to be the exception.